trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Inside to Stevenson, up against Kaminsky, Bucky good in the ball!
Santel, all the way to the basket, foul, lays it in for two!
Hey, hello high school basketball fans. Welcome to the Upstate Hoops Podcast here on Monday, January 27th, 2025. I'm Jim Sinicropi, along with Paul Russo and Kyle Evans in the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls. Big show today. We're going to, of course, recap some of the big games this week, and there were a few really big games. New power rankings week ahead, where the schedules are now packed full as we approach the last couple weeks of the regular season. But then at the end, we're going to take a walk through all the sectional classifications, boys and girls. So grab your popcorn, go to the bathroom if you have to. This is going to be a long one. But a good one. The Upstate Hoops Podcast and all of our coverage of Wayne Finger Lakes High School basketball is brought to you thanks to the support of Little John and Barbie Orthodontics. Check out Dr. Rod and Dr. Liz online at littlejohnortho.com. And Cicino's Pizzeria and Restaurant. Order online at cichinos.com or stop in downtown Waterloo or Geneva. And DeSanto Propane since 1937. The difference has been DeSanto Propane. Well, fellas, welcome back to the studio. Big day of football yesterday. We're going to pivot now to high school basketball. Quickly, just kind of a light week, but some games of consequence. Start with the boys' side of things here. Minders hosted Wayne early in the week last week, and Minders plays Wayne tough. They were leading 12-9 after the first quarter. Only down 2 at halftime, and then Wayne came out firing in the third quarter, building a lead at 12 points, but Minders fought back in the fourth, narrowing it to just 5 with 3 minutes to play, but the Eagles ended on an 8-1 run to secure the victory. So Wayne back on the winning track. Minders, I think that's like 5 of their last 6 they lost. One of the games of the week came out of the West on the boys' side. South Seneca and Honeoye, undefeated South Seneca against one-loss Honeoye. And it was Honeoye with a 62-56 win at home, evening up their season series. They both have one loss to each other. The Bulldogs took control early, opening with a 10-0 run in the first 6 minutes and ended up 17-6 after the first quarter of play. They stretched their lead out to 38-18. And as much as 19-point lead with 4:48 left in the third quarter. But the Falcons fought back, outscoring the Bulldogs 35-22 the rest of the way, but it wasn't quite enough as Honeoye was able to secure the victory. For South Seneca, Kenny Halsey had 16, Logan Laverick had 13, Taj Amasano had 13, and for Honeoye, Landon Washburn had 17 in the win, Owen Reynolds 16, and Braden Schneider with 11. Another big game in the West, Dundee Bradford outlasted Red Jacket in a pretty good game, 46-42, thanks to 16 points from Aiden Webster. And moving through the week, Newark had a out-of-league game against Wilson Magnet. They got a much-needed win, 55-44. Terrell Jenkins, 27 points. And the Waterloo boys have been really the story in the Finger Lakes East this year. They went to Pelmac and emerged with a 69-56 win, thanks to 20 points from Cameron Jacobs on 5 3-pointers and 18 points from Carter Peterson with 4 3-pointers. Minders, after that tough loss to Wayne, hosted Geneva on Friday night, an important game for both teams. The Panthers built an 11-point lead in the first half and entered halftime up 7, but much like they've done in the past, they stormed back, outscoring Geneva 23-14, took a 2-point lead heading into the fourth quarter, but it wasn't enough as Andrew Green hit a clutch go-ahead three-pointer for the Panthers with a minute left. Patrick Overstreet then sealed the victory, hitting 2 of 4 free throws in the final 20 seconds. 6-game win streak for the Panthers, while Minders, as I mentioned, dropped 5 of their last 6. For Geneva, it was Caden Larson-Porter with 16 points, DePatrick Overstreet with 16, Andrew Green with 13. Minders, season-high 17 points from Jack Brady and 13 from Griffin Hillmeyer. And another game of note this week, Lions lost to CG Finney 67-65 as they continue their tough schedule with that loss there. Kick it over to the girls' side of things. Waterloo lost their 3rd game of the year, and it was like their other 2 losses to a Class A opponent, 57-33. Pittsford Sutherland really put it on them. But again, Waterloo's 3 losses, all against Class A teams. They did bounce back with a win against Palmac, one of their biggest rivals in league over the past few seasons, 65-57. Red Raiders led by 3 points at halftime, but the Tigers took control in the 3rd quarter, outscored Palmac 43-32 in the second half, behind 24 points from Gwen Panic and 23 points from Addison Bree. The Lions and Clyde girls tangled in a rivalry game. Lions won fairly easily, 57-43 to improve to 9-1 behind. Oh, wait a second. Is that Clyde or Gananda?
The Thursday game was Clyde.
Yeah, okay. All right. And then I see as well Gananda and East Rochester squared off, and Gananda won 59-38, 22 points from Avery Hoffman. So, kind of a slight week, but some big games of implication. Can't spend too much time talking about that, though. We want to show you the power rankings as they stand here heading into the last week in January. Take a look at the boys. Wayne holds number 1. Geneva shoots up the rankings to number 2. Lions drops 1 spot to 3. Waterloo at 4. Honeoye with that big win over South Seneca up to 5th. South Seneca just behind at 6. Marcus Whitman boys struggle a little bit with Brody Royston being out. They dropped to 7. East Rochester boys, who had reached as high as the top 3 earlier in the season, now at 8. And Gananda and Pelmac rounded out, tied for 9. You know, a couple Finger Lakes East teams, Newark, Minders, traditional regulars in the top 10 power rankings, not there. And, you know, we're running out of time here. Obviously, for Minders, I think they can still have success in sectionals as we look at their class later on. But for a team like Newark that plays up in a higher class, we've been waiting for him to turn it around and not seeing it.
Yeah, a bit unfortunate on that front so far. I mean, hey, never say never, right? But, it's going to be a fun week. I mean, we're going to talk about it in a minute, but, you know, positions 1 through 4 are going to be up for grabs throughout the week. And then certainly at the bottom half, too, of those power rankings will be up for grabs as well, just based on the matchups we got coming up.
Geneva Lions playing, so if you're upset that the Geneva lapped them, the Panthers come into the community center in Lions for a big game on Tuesday night. Finger Lakes one will be there. I think you guys are both calling it, right, together?
All right.
Yeah. Any predictions?
Well, I'll jump ahead and go first. I think it's an interesting week, first and foremost, for Geneva, because then they also are at Wayne to wrap up the week this week.
Tough week.
Which is why I alluded to the fact that really, to be fair, 1 through 4 is probably up for grabs this week in boys' power rankings. Let's see. Lions beat them up there last year. I think Geneva could get a little revenge tomorrow. I could definitely see it. If the door was ever open, it's open now. You know.
Yeah, what do you think, Kyle?
Didn't they play twice last year, or am I mistaken? I thought they split.
Oh, maybe they did. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
team won each game.
You're right. It was. Yeah. My mistake.
But yeah, Geneva. Like I said, I definitely moved them up to second just for this week. Tomorrow we'll take care of who's really better. Yeah. I think Geneva's playing really well, but I think Lions is also just facing tough schedule. And that's maybe the reason they're 7-5. But I do think Lions is pretty good.
Yeah, Lions has one of the tougher schedules, and it's kind of in contrast to what they've had done for the past several seasons. Last season was a little better, but this is a true difficult schedule constructed to prepare Lions for the postseason. So I wouldn't get too hung up with Lions' 7-5 record. Yeah. But it will be a good barometer on Tuesday night. You can listen to that game live on FingerLakes1.com. Is it one of our games of the week for sure? Kick it over to the girls. Let's see how they're shaping up. Waterloo, number 1, despite a loss to Pittsford Sutherland. But, again, their 3 losses all to Class A teams. Nobody else has been able to beat them. Certainly nobody on this list. Lions girls putting together a really good season at number 2. The Newark girls stumble a little bit out of the gate, but they've been playing good basketball since Bloomfield in the East this year, up to number 4. Marcus Whitman girls really having a good season. When I think about Marcus Whitman, I think this is the 4th season that maybe Liz Royston's taken over the program. And so you're seeing kids on her team now that maybe she's been working with since rec ball. It's you really, when you take control of a program, you got to build it from the ground up. I think that's what we're seeing in Marcus Whitman, having a great season. Dundee Bradford, always tough, tied with Palmac at 6. Palmac, Newark, Waterloo, Bloomfield's tough in the Finger Lakes East. A little bit of a surprise to see Waterloo just having the success they're having again this year, because I think those other teams that I just mentioned are obviously strong as well. Gananda in Wayne County at 8, Clyde Savannah 9, and Penn Yan out of the East closing out our top 10. Thoughts, fellas, on the girls' top 10?
Well, I was talking with Kyle off air a little bit. I've apparently been giving jinxes out here for some teams here that I've given credit to, so apologize in advance. I had the Marcus Whitman girls personally up at 3. I mean, they just kind of keep on winning, and I don't know. It's tough with the light weeks like last week because you're gauging off of essentially for everybody maybe one game, maybe not even a game, period, in some situations. So it's a tough gauge. The girls, again, kind of showing a little bit of these stuff to call small schools when they're all kind of small schools. But, the Wayne County and Finger Lakes West kind of representing pretty well, again, on the girls' side of things here.
Yeah, and for me, I put Bloomfield ahead of Newark again. They beat Newark head-to-head.
Yep.
They have the same exact league record, but I think Bloomfield's a little better. But Newark is I think going to eventually get more wins. They're 8-5. I think we all thought they'd be a little bit better in terms of wins.
Well, I tell you, when we're talking about these power rankings and these teams, it really comes down to, or will come down to, how they square off against teams of their similar size, schools of their similar size in sectionals, and we're going to take a good look at that in just a moment. We're kind of flying through this week's show because we are going to spend some time with the sectional classes. So first, let's take a look at the week ahead.
Here we go.
So, full slate of games. Whitman, East Rochester boys game should be a good one. I haven't heard anything about, if Brody Royston's going to be back or not, but obviously they need all their weapons in place to play good teams like East Rochester, and they got to go on the road tonight. Tuesday night, Geneva at Lions, as I mentioned, live on FingerLakes1.com. Paul and Kyle will be up in the broadcast roost at the community center. Should be a great atmosphere for that one. Wellsville coming all the way up north to take on Palmyra. They might want to fly in for that one. It's a long drive on a Tuesday night. Red Creek boys, we didn't talk about yet today. They're putting together a nice season. They'll host Williamson, who is also kind of resurgent a bit. And then Waterloo boys going down to South Seneca. Boy, that's an interesting one. But I think you're going to see the difference between maybe the top Finger Lakes West teams and the top Finger Lakes East teams. Traditionally, it's going to be tough, I think, for South Seneca to keep that one close. But it's also an opportunity for them to surprise us and show us that we're wrong. But interesting game there. Waterloo, South Seneca, a couple Seneca County teams. One-loss South Seneca team against the team that just beat Wayne in the Finger Lakes East last week. Moving on to Wednesday, Mid-Lakes at Marcus Whitman. Thursday, Clyde at Williamson. Honeoye at Dundee Bradford, a huge game in the West. Gananda at Lions. They're not league mates anymore, but still a bit of a rivalry feel to that one. As the Gananda boys playing well. And then move on to Friday night. Traditional big night in the Finger Lakes East has Geneva at Wayne. And Waterloo at Newark. Pelmac at Penn Yan. And then on Saturday night, one lone game, Red Creek at Sodus. Let's check out the girls.
There we go.
Whoa, a lot of games here. Had to make the font smaller. Man, full schedule here.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Monday night, what do we see? Red Creek at South Seneca could be a good one. Wayne at Waterloo should be an easy one for Waterloo. Move on to Tuesday. Pelmac playing Canandaigua. South Seneca at Naples. Red Jack at Marcus Whitman. Move on to Wednesday. Clyde Gananda will be a great game for the girls in the Wayne County League. Newark at Penn Yan. Not an easy gimme game for Newark there. East Rochester at Sodus. And then moving on to Thursday night, Geneva at Attica. Minders at Mid-Lakes. And Red Jacket at HAC. And then finally, last day of the month, Wayne at Bloomfield. Dundee Bradford at Honeoye. Red Creek at East Rochester could be a good one. Gananda at Lions Girls should be a great one. That's probably the game of the night, honestly, there. Except when you keep going, you'll see Newark at Waterloo. And I think this is a great chance for the Newark girls to really make a statement as we move through the end of the postseason here. I'm sure a lot of these girls teams in the Finger Lakes East are getting sick of playing second fiddle to Waterloo. Newark, obviously a really strong team with led by Tequila Vaughn. I'm sure they would love to get a win on the road at Waterloo, so we'll keep our eyes on that one. Full slate of games here, a lot of interesting games as league races get down the stretch and we get ready for sectionals. So, as I mentioned and promised, we're going to take a look at the sectional classifications now and discuss them. There's quite a few, obviously, but really teams are trying to win sectional titles, and these classifications show the groups of teams that are vying for a sectional title. So while, for instance, it may be difficult for a South Seneca team to play a Waterloo team, you'll see that they're not in the same sectional classification. South Seneca will be playing schools their size, as will Waterloo. So this is really what's exciting and interesting to look at. It's the first time we've kind of done it this year. So without further ado, Paul, how are we going to do it? Boys and girls?
We're going
Girls and boys?
Yeah, we'll start with at least boys Class A, just for the fact of we got a lot of different inputs going on here today. So
yeah, and it changes from year to year. You don't always see Wayne and Newark or Pelmac together or Geneva, but this year they certainly all are together, and that it just exasperates the issues that Newark is having. You see they've got a 7-8 record there, and they're looking to not even grab a home game in the first round unless they win a few games here. Pelmac boys having a decent season for maybe what we thought, and you can see too why a game like Geneva taking on Lions is so important here. You want to get into that top four to at least keep your home field through the semifinals, where usually they're actually always on a neutral court. Wayne, obviously a favorite, up to number 2, but one of their big rivals, East High's number 1. But when I look at this, Batavia not too strong this year, even for a 10-3 team. I mean, we've seen them lose to Marcus Whitman earlier in the season. Pittsford Sutherland, pretty solid, but when you look at this and it does give you hope for Newark to put something together and make a run. It does make you wonder if Pelmac or Geneva can, make a run and do it. I mean, Wayne's shown that they've been beatable, and obviously Waterloo did beat them, and other teams have been close. I mean, Minders gave them a good game, right? Twice. But, East High probably the team to beat, but wide open for a Class A, don't you think, fellas?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think this is probably the most wide open, at least on the boys' side, I think, anyway.
Especially for a big
a
big school class.
The interesting thing here is, and this is the one inside baseball moment here for everybody. This was the one graphic I did last night as opposed to today, and East got one more reported game in. But East, so the way that people do, if you don't know, the way that they do it, we go by points, but there's a seeding point, which is kind of like an average seed per point earned per game.
Boys and girls do it a little different. But,
on the boys' side. So East, they'd be number 1 here no matter what, because they've only played 8 games so far. 8 games, 35 points, but their seeding point average is 4.357 now. Wayne, who is obviously in second, 14 games played, 51 points earned, 3.643.
God.
So, interesting stuff there. That would be a rematch, obviously, hypothetically, if we got to that point in sectional time at sectional final.
Wayne East High.
Yeah,
that's
from
good.
last year, and I'm pretty sure actually same for seeding wise too. It would be
Yeah, it's happened
spot on the money there.
more than a handful of times over there. East High, the winningest school in Section 5, if you go by sectional titles. Second place, Lions. So, yeah, I mean, Kyle, do you think Geneva or Palmac was right behind them, or even Newark have a chance?
Yeah, I mean, especially after that Waterloo game, I definitely think, you can't just totally rule it out. And, these teams did face off. Every one of them have played Wayne at least once so far. They actually still have to all play Wayne again for a second time coming up, so we'll even get a better, a better view of where they're at. But the first two games, it was a 19 and 17 point difference. Geneva lost by 17, Newark lost by 19. But yeah, I mean, it's possible. And if Cam's not getting help, as we've seen Aiden Twist cool off a little bit the last couple of games, they're beatable.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that when Geneva and Newark and Palmac face Wayne for a second time, it will be with that in mind to build the confidence that maybe they can compete in Section A, Class A sectionals. That would be a good way to get in the right frame of mind. Not even if you don't win that game, but if you take it to the end and keep it close, I think you got to have a little confidence that you can then repeat that and maybe pull it out in sectionals if you do end up facing a Wayne or an East High. So, moving on.
We'll stick in A. We'll do girls Class A.
Girls Class A, and again, you see the same schools because for the most part, it's based on school size, but you do see a big difference in terms of where these schools are. The Wayne girls struggling at 1 and 9. Geneva girls done a really good job of rebuilding their program. I don't know if they're ready yet to compete in sectionals, especially in Class A, but Palmac and Newark, I think, certainly can. Mid-Lakes 3 and 9 as well down at the bottom. I mean, these are some tough teams. You saw what Pittsburgh Sutherland did to Waterloo this week, and they're just the 4th seed. East Ridge, East High, Our Lady of Mercy, Pitt Sutherland, Honeoye Falls, Lima. So I do think that Newark and Palmac are built to compete. And I think there is a big difference, between Newark, Palmac, and then Geneva. So when I look at Class A, I think that if you're looking to hang your hopes on a Finger Lakes East team, it would be Newark or Palmac. And I think Newark.
Yeah, I would be in full agreement on that front at this point anyway. Obviously, we still got 3+ weeks to go here. I think it's 24 days technically or something like that. But
Not that long. Today's the 27th.
Yeah.
Usually sectional start by
Maybe I guess
Valentine's Day.
maybe it's like a hair longer. But
Shorter, right?
It's like 23 days. I think the 19th is the last day.
I thought the 20th was the last day.
I mean, there's one game. It's Lions and World of Inquiry. So
Yeah.
Either way, then, a lot can happen between now and then. Still, we'll see. But yeah, I think Newark's probably the best chance. Palmac's right there too. To be fair, but
Well, tearing goodness goes a long way.
yeah, but the hill to climb for the Finger Lakes East teams in A, I think on the girls' side is a little bit steeper than the boys' side.
yeah, and Palmac's record. I mean, I know they're 7-4, but if you look, I mentioned the other night, they've played all these Class A teams that are very, very good, and have played them tough for the most part, except for that recent game against Sutherland. But yeah, I think Newark has even a better chance because they already beat Palmac head-to-head.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but I think this is one of the more tougher classes for sure.
Yeah, and it would be something. It would really be something for Newark and the coach Diane. Drawing a blank on the last. Yeah. Congratulations. She had a what milestone win this week?
Yeah, she became the 8th winningest coach all time in Section 5. I believe it. I can't remember the win total.
400.
409, I believe. Yeah.
Pretty impressive. A sectional title's been something the Newark girls program hasn't even thought of for 15 years. I can't even remember last time they had a contender. But they do have a contender this year. But they're up in Class A. It's going to be tough. So something to watch there.
Alrighty, let's go over to girls B1.
Girls B1. Now this is Waterloo. I don't, Waterloo is certainly a favorite for sectionals, but they're only a 3 seed. But again, played a tough schedule. Hornell will be tough. Young women, huh? 10-1.
No idea. Yeah.
Tough to tell there. And they're in there with Wellsville and Dansville, and then Penn Yan and Minders probably aren't serious contenders here at this point in the season from what we've seen. So it's it's Waterloo's world in Class B1, and of course Waterloo hopes to win another sectional title and maybe move beyond as they have in the past as well. So small, and it does work out in their favor that it's a smaller group, just 10 teams in Class B1 for the girls.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to look at this, not to say for us, at least locally speaking, not to hitch the wagon to Waterloo, obviously, but there's a lot of what I call the usual suspects in here, and you mentioned them, Jim, right? Hornell, Wellsville, Dansville,
Yep.
and then Young Women, which I can't even tell you because they're one of the schools that bounces between classes every year.
What do you know about young women, Kyle?
I'm actually checking right now.
I'm sorry.
I get it. I get why you're laughing, but I'm actually researching it because I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at this. The first game, they only beat North Rose-Woket by 7.
Yeah.
So how are they 10-1?
Yeah, weak schedule.
A lot of blowouts, but they're playing teams that I don't think are good. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a fluke record.
Yeah, when your
Based
number
on what I'm
one
seeing.
seed is not really playing a lot of tough games. It's one way to get the 1 seed, but again, with Waterloo being at the top of the bracket, they'll be home until they get to the Final Four, and I'm sure that if they were to face Young Women, that they'd be heavily favored. So it's really Hornell, Dansville, like you said, and Waterloo. But
And sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
They've only played Livonia this year out of all them teams. And
who
they
was their
don't.
one loss to?
Sorry, it's gonna take a time to load.
It's just interesting to see if it was a
Still loading.
well.
It has to be a recent loss because I'm not seeing it. Oh, Aquinas. They lost by 35.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, like I say, Waterloo, heavy favorites, Hornell favorites. That would be a good sectional final for sure. B1 boys.
Yes, sir.
And again, I mean, maybe one of the surprises of the year, Waterloo boys. Honestly, I don't think we had them in our top 10 preseason, and now they're up to number, 3 or 4?
Yeah, they're up at 4 now.
And they're 10-3, and they're 2 seed in Class B1. World of Inquiry, a very strong team. That'll be their biggest competition for sure. And between Leroy, Wellsville, Hornell, all good teams. And then you see Minders, 7 seed, but still I think they have the talent, and especially the way they played a lot of top teams in the East close, but haven't been able to get over the hump. They got to improve. They need more consistent scoring from Plummer on the inside. But, this is a common theme for Minders. Kind of struggle regular season in a tough league and then step into sectionals and make a run. So potential Minders Waterloo semifinal game or final even is something that gets me pretty excited. But a lot of teams here, probably everybody ahead of Minders with a legitimate shot. But World of Inquiry, very good and probably the favorite.
Yeah, they've beaten Marcus Whitman, Lions, Minders. I mean, Penn Yan, you can't even include them, but I'm just thinking of the Wayne Finger Lakes teams they've beaten. So, yeah, I think they're going to be tough.
Yeah, World of Inquiry's kind of become one of the teams that when we've talked with coaches at games, they've been kind of the one team that those coaches have talked about the most, for sure, in terms of the out of stuff. Yeah, the interesting one on the Minders front would be, I think the way the bracket's set up, Minders Waterloo could be, if Minders wins, would be a quarterfinal, I think.
Oh, quarterfinal.
Because
Yeah,
there's
that would-
12 teams, so
I'd rather see that happen in the semis.
yeah, 'cause
But
if there's 12 teams, I would think there would be. I think the top 2 teams get a bye.
I think Minders wouldn't mind being on the opposite side of the bracket too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But crosstown rivals, and despite the difference in their record, I do think it would be a close game. I just think Minders has not played up to their potential, based on their roster. But the beautiful thing about high school basketball is if they can find something to click here in the next couple weeks, they could win that Class B1 as easily as anyone. But right now, World of Inquiry, Waterloo, kind of looking at the front runners.
Yeah, Leroy up there too. So.
Leroy, yeah. All right, let's
Boys B2.
Boys B2. It's funny because these are a lot historically have been C teams, but things change from year to year with the classifications. But it does mean that the winner of B1 and B2 play in the state qualifier. So you could see where you haven't seen too much in the past, although it has actually happened if you go back 10, 15 years where Lions could play like a Minders in a state playing type of situation. But as far as it looks here, East Rochester boys probably the surprise of the class. Really having a breakout year at 10-2. Avon's always tough. Canisteo Greenwood's been tough. They've played a lot of Wayne Finger Lakes teams this year, as Kyle probably will fill us in on. Marcus Whitman really gave back a lot of potential sectional seeding points during this period of time that Brody Royston's been out. So hopefully he gets healthy. And then Lions, who usually finds themselves as a 1 or 2 seed, down in 5 based on their tough scheduling. So that's the thing with scheduling, right? You want to prepare your team for sectionals, but you also want to have a favorable seed for a lot of reasons. The good news is our Lions will probably be home through the semifinals, maybe have to play away in the quarterfinals based on how it shakes out. But
they get one guaranteed at least, I would think.
It's a pretty wildly interesting from a Wayne Finger Lakes perspective here. You got Independence and Lions and Whitman, one a former Wayne and one a former Finger Lakes West and East team, and then East Rochester, Lions' old Wayne County nemesis, all in the top 5. Holly, Bishop Kearney. I mean, you really see a drop off in terms of record when you get down to 7 and below. Williamson's played better, so this is but they're not going to make a run to the Blue Cross Arena. But we could see a sectional final of East Rochester versus Marcus Whitman, or East Rochester Lions or Marcus Whitman Lions, or a semifinal, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I would dare say the cutoff is probably Lions in my mind in terms of B2. The interesting one, this isn't a Wayne Finger Lakes team, but Pembroke is the one team that, when I was looking at the standings, kind of surprised me. They've actually them and Lions have met in the past 2 postseasons. One in the state crossover or qualifier, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And then last year in the sectional final game. So kind of seeing them kind of fall off because they did graduate people, but they did have people come back. Kind of caught me off guard a little bit. But, I think pretty much Lions is going to be, whoever's in the 5th seed is going to be the cutoff. And I'll say that only because, like I said, we got games to be played still and everything like that. So I think that's where your probable champion sitting is.
Well, Lions can pick up some serious sectional points in that game against Geneva because Geneva's Class A. You get more sectional points if you beat a team up. So that becomes an even bigger game Tuesday night that you guys are calling for Finger Lakes 1. But it's a little odd, Kyle, for Lions, I guess, to kind of be 5th seed with a good team, a sectional contending team. We're used to seeing them head into sectionals as a top seed.
Yeah, it's definitely different. And just imagine if Whitman hadn't dropped 3 straight, they'd be a couple games ahead of Lions, even if they would have lost the head-to-head matchup.
They were up at 2, I think it was before.
Yeah, ahead of East Rochester.
Yeah, and Canisteo Greenwood, I did some research quickly. They beat a healthy Whitman team, and then they lost to Lions by 2. Mm-hmm. But came back in that game after being down 9. So, and then Avon, I looked, they haven't played any Wayne Finger Lakes teams, but they play Geneva. I know they're not in the class, but they play Geneva coming up, so that should be a good game. And then, like you mentioned earlier, East Rochester plays Whitman tomorrow, and we'll see if Brody's back and if they're going to be a healthy team, because that could be a potential matchup down the road as well.
Yeah, definitely a real interesting bracket there, and see how it plays out and where the seedings fall, but should make for some great postseason action in B2 boys.
B2 girls.
B2 girls. There, look at Liz Royston's Marcus Whitman team, 12-1, and Lions 10-1. Williamson Marion putting together a good comeback season. Combining obviously helps, but it's good to see those 2 schools with a lot of basketball tradition starting to become relevant again. Leroy and Canisteo Greenwood, but boy, a Whitman Lions girls final. It
More than likely Rush, I would say, right?
yeah, Rush Henrietta would be really good. It's exciting to see the Wayne Finger Lakes teams 1 and 2 there, and Leroy, Canasteo, Greenwood are good teams too. I don't think Whitman or Lions have anything guaranteed. I don't think they're that dominant of teams, even though they're both 1-loss teams. But very good teams. Hope to see them in the finals.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty good there, at least on my end of things.
I mean, what year is
think-
Jayla Bell? Junior.
Senior.
She is a
Oh,
senior.
she is?
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is her last chance to bring home a sectional title.
Yep.
For Lions. Whitman girls, I can't remember the last time they won a sectional title. I mean, I'm sure someone from Whitman could tell us, but I would be willing to wager it's been 20 years.
I probably shouldn't say this because it'll probably come back at me, but if these teams met in the final, I think it'd be so lopsided. I think Lions is just so much better than they are, and it has to
Whitman.
do with the classes.
Yeah.
But who knows? They could come back and haunt me. But I think Lions is really good. They just beat Canasteo Greenwood on Saturday by 8 points. They trailed at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, I think don't feel like Jayla Bell and company are kind of on a mission this year.
Yeah, and she's actually 70 points away from breaking Justice Smith's all-time scoring record in Lions.
Oh wow, man! I watched Justice Smith pour a lot of points in over the years, and so that's I mean, Jayla's been up there since 7th grade.
Yep.
I think.
Justice was 13 points away from 2,000, so she could hit 2,000 actually.
Well, she's got enough games left to do it. That's for sure.
I'm about to say 70 is definitely attainable.
9 regular
And at
season
that
games,
point,
and
at that point, it'd be 83 to 2,000. So, I mean,
Well, when it's all said and done, she's going to have a great career under her belt. But for I mean, I think without talking to anybody over there, that the real prize, the real way to send her off would be a sectional championship. But I also know that the season that they're having at Marcus Whitman and the way that community rallies around their teams, that it could just be a great final matchup. You'd see the stands packed with fans from both sides and be a good game. So, all right, let's move it on down the classifications.
go girls C1 first here.
And it's so weird. Now you got 17 teams in this one, where the last one, we had 10 teams. It's just kind of the way it shakes out, but it doesn't really make a ton of sense. East Rochester girls, disappointing season based on what we were kind of projecting, more based on what they've done the past few years. But I think if you're Clyde Savannah at the 6th seed, that you can consider. There's no dominant. Well, the dominant team's probably Bloomfield, wouldn't you say?
Them, Gananda, yeah.
I think Gananda, Red Creek, Clyde Savannah, kind of familiar with each other, but Gananda is the number 1 seed for a reason. But you got Bloomfield, who moved from the Finger Lakes West to the East this year, played a tough schedule. I don't know about Byron Bergen or Cal Mum, but I like Bloomfield in this class, but it could really make for some good matchups, especially in the semifinals in Class C1.
I mean, just even looking at it from this point, I know Cal Mum's playing some Finger Lakes West teams here in the next couple weeks too, so we could at least get a gauge on where they kind of stand within it.
well, tonight Cal Mum actually is playing Gananda.
Right. Oh, well, yeah.
Well, that's a huge game as far as C1 standings.
Yep, and that looks like the only matchup for Cal Mum. I'm checking Byron
Maybe
Bergen.
I'm getting boys teams crossed up there then.
Checking Byron Bergen. Looks like no, they don't play any Wayne Finger Lakes teams either.
Is it
Oh wait, actually they get Gananda the second to last game.
Wow, so Gananda playing both of those two teams.
Yep, in the next
is a
3
1
weeks.
seed. So that will look. I tell you what, if Gananda handles those teams, then maybe Bloomfield isn't looking as dominant as maybe I thought. But I like Bloomfield in that class to get a sectional title, which it's something Bloomfield girls program historically. That's their goal, sectional titles, and it's nice to see them back, in a power position in terms of making that run.
Be a pretty good, if they were to do it right, pretty good feather in the cap for going to Finger Lakes East this year too and everything, and showing that probably doesn't matter for them at least what league they're in, and they can do it in whichever one they kind of choose in that sense, I suppose.
When we look at these, we're always want if we could get a Finger Lakes Wayne Finger Lakes team winning each of these classifications, boy, it really becomes fun for us moving forward with state qualifiers and that type of thing. It really, seeing the Wayne Finger Lakes team square off in semifinals and finals is really exciting for us here at Finger Lakes 1.
Yep. A lot of fun over at HFL.
Yep. And the Blue Cross.
That's true, yeah. We're going to go girls C2 here because the boys have 3 different Cs. So for the sake of everything here, we're going to stick on girls C2 for a moment.
Yeah, this is now Keshequa, York, very good. Oakfield, Alabama, historically good. You see Dundee, Bradford probably here is the only hope for the Wayne Finger Lakes. Kudos to what they're doing in South Seneca. And Naples, really all these West teams are having respectable seasons, especially based on recent years, but I don't think they've quite gotten to the point where we can expect them to compete in this class, which for a lower C class is very tough. But you got to hang your hat on Dundee Bradford.
Yeah, it's interesting because we haven't seen maybe Keshequa the past couple of years really been where they have been in the past. Actually, I remember the first championship game I called for us over here at FL1 was Keshequa Lions girls sectional title back in 2020, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely remember them pretty well, and it's been interesting. Like I said, it's probably the best year they've had in a couple of years. York as well. That was a team that was combined with Pavilion a couple of years ago too, so they're back being a standalone, and they're up there. This is probably the toughest mountain that Dundee Bradford's probably had in the past couple of years in sectional standings that they've had to climb.
Yeah, and they're coming off a loss to Arkport, Canaseraga by 6. It was their second straight loss because they played a Class A team as well. I think Dundee Bradford is good, but I also don't think they're the same team as what they were last year. They lost Kaylee Yeoman and I think Bruna Crespo.
Yep.
Yeah, 2 big seniors that guided them.
Yeah, and again, that happens a lot too, where you have a really good team, you lose a couple of those key players, but then you come back, you have a good season, and maybe the team that wasn't quite the best team between the two Dundee teams, ends up winning, a sectional title.
And one quick note, sorry to cut you off. York, I know they're in the different classes, but York actually swept the Bloomfield girls this year.
Yeah, York.
Bloomfield
That's
was
why the
good.
first thing when that popped up, you see York up there with who was the 1 seed.
Keshequa.
Yeah, and it's just like, wow, that's for C2. Those are some good programs, for sure. So,
All right, back to the boys' side, and we start in the C1 for them.
Ganada boys 2 seed. Red Creek boys quietly this year they haven't had a really strong team for the last 6, 7, 8 years since Jacob Slobe and I can't remember the other kid's name. They're brothers. Anyways, but yeah, they're back here in contention. Geneseo looks to be tough to beat. Alexander as well. Eugenio Maria kind of floats around the different classes as they're placed by the competition committee.
What a weird, I don't mean to sound whatever, what a weird situation they've been in, even going back to like 3 years ago when they first came onto the scene. It's kind of crazy to see them where they are right now.
Yeah, they've been all over the place. So anyways, there'll be Gananda's and Red Creek's team to deal with problem here in C1, but I think the more of an issue is going to be Geneseo.
Yeah.
And Alexander.
I was about to say Alexander to me is kind of the one that really sticks out because I remember back in high school for me when they were still hanging on really tough, and seeing them trend back towards the top is at least a good sign for them, obviously. But
Cal Mom and Byron Burgeon kind of being down does give it a little hope.
another one that baffled me too, Byron Burgeon being down that low.
Yeah. But yeah, tough class, Kyle, here for Gananda or Red Creek, but certainly doable, especially when you see Gananda up there as the 2nd seed.
Yeah, and they've actually been playing really well. I mean, they beat East Rochester. I know they're not in the same class. I think they've won 5 of 6. They're getting a lot of scoring from Hunter Vogt, and I forgot the other kid's name, but they're just playing really well. And I think if they continue to play well, they could beat anyone. Kind of like Waterloo beat Wayne. No one saw that coming. Anything can happen.
Yeah, and it's a 1-game situation, survive and advance in the postseason, for sure. So that was C1. Now looking at C2, and Yeah, Dundee Bradford boys, #1 seed. Red Jacket boys have been flying under the radar because they're not quite at the top of the West with teams like South Seneca and Honeyway playing so well, but they've been playing tough, and so you have a couple of West teams and the Clyde Savannah boys. This is a situation here where it's unlikely, but the Clyde Savannah boys could make a run from the 9th seed at 5-7 because there's no super dominant teams in this class. A lot of solid programs, but I think you could, anyone from Clyde up could make a run and win this class.
Yeah, it's a lot closer than I think numbers and records kind of indicate there. I can't tell you the last time I saw Cuba Rushford be remotely near the top, admittedly. But
Batavia's up there.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
They're not a dominant team by
yeah,
any stretch.
this one's a bit. I wouldn't say wide open.
I think it's wide open.
Well, I suppose. I guess I view wide open as there being a lot of whatever. But
Yeah, anyone in the
yeah,
top 9.
the Clyde one's the interesting one because they're sitting right below 500. You get hot at the right time. Obviously, we talked about it already a little bit, but you get into these 1-game sample size type situations. Anything can really happen.
Yeah, and Dundee Bradford actually barely just beat Red Jacket. So Red Jacket was right there hanging around with them. And I agree with you guys. I think it's pretty wide open for the most part.
All right. That'll be one, could be fun come February. Yeah. And 3 class. So now when there's 3 classes and as like there is for boys here, it really makes things tough because you have to have 2 playing games, 2 teams play to play. So the 3 champions you'll get C1, C2, C3. And it isn't always C2 versus C3 to play C1. I don't know how they're going to figure that out this year.
Wasn't it a coin flip last year or something?
I think it goes by total sectional points, maybe.
Yeah.
But it does make it more difficult for these Section 5 teams as they enter the state tournament because they have to win 2 games, sometimes arbitrarily just 1. But the teams that do have to play 2, it's kind of tough.
Could be playing 3 games in 5 days.
Yeah, right, because it's all kind of condensed. And then if you have any type of weather situation, it really turns into a nightmare.
Which happened 2 years ago.
yeah, everybody's scrambling, including us trying to broadcast them and, the referee, all of it. But what's exciting about this is you got South Seneca and Honeyway out of the Finger Lakes West, 1 and 2, and they split in the regular season. Of course, Honeyway won this past week in a huge game. Pretty disappointing, I think, for South Seneca to break that undefeated streak. But they do hold more than a slight edge here in the #1 to #2 seed. But dreams of potential South Seneca Honeyway in the Blue Cross Arena
would be awesome.
But with that being said, Wheatland Chile, North Star Christian, Arkport Canasteraga, a tough team. CG Finney just beat Lions. And you're talking about a 7 seed. Or did they beat Lions?
Yeah,
this week. And they're a 7 seed in C3. So that's kind of confusing. And, Mount Morris is always tough. So while you do see South Seneca Homeaway #1 and 2, and you think, oh, okay, maybe they will meet in the finals, I really don't necessarily see that happening.
The interesting team here to me is that Wheatland Chili team. South Seneca played them a couple of years ago, hosted them in sectional play, and ended up losing. Wheatland Chili ended up making a pretty incredible run through sectional to get to the sectional final to play against Lions that year, a couple of years ago. And there's a lot of people on that team that are still there for Wheatland Chili. So that's an interesting team sitting at the 3 seed.
Yeah, and the only Wayne Fairlake team they did play is Gananda, and they beat them by 3. And yeah, as for Honeyway, they haven't lost since that opening, since their season opener.
November.
Fell to South Seneca.
Yeah.
They've won 11 straight, the longest winning streak in all of the Wayne Finger Lakes.
Yeah, it's been pretty impressive. It's just a matter of, when they step out of the West and play some of these teams, but that's what's interesting, and that's the challenge too, I suppose. So it's just great personally to see the South Seneca boys back in a competitive position. It's a long-time proud program with state championship banners hanging from their rafters in the Guinan gymnasium in Ovid, and then coming off the fire in Ovid too. It's another layer of maybe something for the folks in South Seneca to look forward to, is rooting on the Falcon boys here as they head towards sectionals. And then Honeyway, they were recent, not too long ago. They took on a tough Clyde team in the Blue Cross Arena in a sectional final. A game they lost. One of their key players went down with an injury. That was a really good Clyde team, but Honeyway kind of hung tough. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
All right, quick look at the Class D standings here on both boys and girls side.
Yeah, so where is this girls?
This is boys.
This is boys. Where's Romulus?
No boys team.
They combined with South Seneca, must be.
I think it's like one player.
Yeah, one player.
The takeaway here is don't count Marion out.
Yes. Bingo.
0-10. No, they're not the 11th seed. They are the 10th seed. But yeah, we won't be paying too much attention to Class D.
The main thing here, I think, if anything, to take note is the fact that Avoca Prattsburg, we mentioned them a little bit earlier a couple weeks ago, but
juggernaut.
Yeah, now you're kind of seeing Fillmore kind of step back up a little bit. Japster-Truesburg used to be pretty hanging tough too there, but yeah, I think the only true above 500 team there is Fillmore. So
yeah, kind of crazy. Fillmore heavy favorites. Wouldn't mind seeing Hammondsport make a run, but gonna be tough. Anyways, not much to look at there in Class D.
Then on the girls' side of things for Class D,
just have Romulus at 1-11. Yeah, Alba, Fillmore, Andover. It's a pretty good class up at the top, but Romulus sadly can call it now. Probably not going to win sectionals this year.
Why not them though?
Dollar in a dream.
Hey,
so
all it takes.
There you have it, man. That was a good show, and I hope that if you stuck around for it all, that you're starting to get a feel now for what's at stake the final couple weeks of the season.
Yeah. What
these sectional tournaments are going to look like in the brackets when they come out. Of course, when they do come out, we have a big show, our sectional preview show. And then it just hits fast and furious. There's two games a week minimum as they work through sectionals and into the semifinals, where the semifinals are going to be played, who's going to be in them. And then for the boys, a chance to get to the Blue Cross Arena, play a championship game. For the girls, it would be Rush Henrietta.
I think they play some down at FLCC too now, but it could be.
Oh, really?
It might be slightly off.
They
did last year.
Drive for us.
Yeah.
So, any parting shots? I mean, I think it's shaping up to be a great postseason.
Wide open. It's probably the most wide open it's been the couple of years that I've been doing this anyway now.
A lot of teams from the smaller schools like South Seneca and Honeyway to
which is perfect for a guy like me because I'm. I love small school atmosphere and stuff like that in the college sense. And trickles down here, I try and be a little bit of the drummer for, the smaller schools. And I know you kind of mentioned it too, Jim, but, stuff like, what's going on down in Ovid with South Seneca and everything, it really would be it's stories like that, right, that really kind of make high school sports and basketball, obviously, that much more of a purpose, more entertaining, more
South
kind
Seneca
of everything.
Needs it. I mean, when the girls were making state runs, I mean, that was something the whole community identified with, and so maybe the boys can replicate that type of deal here, heading into postseason. Kyle, you follow it every night. If you had to put you on the spot here real quick, give me 4 Wayne Finger Lakes teams that you think are going to come out with a sectional title this year based on those standings.
I would say Lions.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Bloomfield girls. Right, we're talking both combined.
Either one, yeah.
I would say it's tough. I'll go Wayne.
Yeah, I was thinking Wayne too. It's it might come down to a showdown against East High, who is, like you said, only played 8 games. Kind of strange.
And this might be a hot take, but I don't think either one of those West teams are gonna win.
South Seneca or Honeyway.
Yeah, boys.
Put my feet to the fire. I can't say that I would put them as favorites, even though they're 1 and 2 seeds.
Yeah, I can't even do the Waterloo girls because Pittsford Sutherland destroyed them the other night.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Is that it? There's got to be maybe one more. Can you guys think of what would you choose?
Lions girls.
Even with
the thing with me
I'm
though,
trying to be realistic.
I was the one who put Lions girls number 2 initially on the power rankings way back when we first did them. Like I've been
that's
been
the
kind of riding.
goal. I guarantee
been
that's
riding
the
them all
goal
year.
for Jay LaBelle in her senior year
Yeah.
is to get one sectional title. She's seen the boys do it, year after year, and the girls' programs kind of played second fiddle. I think that she's kind of on a mission this year. I like the Bloomfield girls, given that they're down in a lower classification than the rest of the Finger Lakes East girls teams. Tough to bet against the Waterloo girls. Waterloo boys, haven't won in a long time.
72.
They came really close in the Blue Cross against Geneva a few years ago. But it's tough to pick. That's tough. It's going to be close games either way.
No.
So, I did put you on the spot there, Kyle, because it's kind of tough. I think there's going to be a lot of contenders, but to actually say that you can pick 4 of them at this point, I think hopefully some of these teams can show us a little more in the final 2 weeks of the regular season and get some momentum going into these sectionals.
Yeah, and I actually do agree with him. He's right about the Lions girls. I forgot Whitman's with them, and I just said earlier that if they were to play, it'd be lopsided, which I really, truly believe that.
Well, the nice thing is we get to talk a lot on here, and we get to make our rankings and our predictions, but what only matters is what happens on the court, and the beautiful part of sectionals, and even the last few weeks of the regular seasons, we're going to see a lot of these matchups on the court, and the team that scores more will win, so... good job, guys. That was a full hour show here at the Upstate Hoops.
I got one more note quick, actually.
Yeah, hit me.
So, I can't believe this, and I guess it's true. So, Honeoye, Landon Washburn, who's a sophomore, is about 73-ish points away from 1,000.
Wow.
Oh, wow. So he must have been up as a
wow.
7th or 8th grader.
Yep. And what is he? List him here as a 6'4" guard, and he's just a young sophomore, and he's chasing 1K.
And trying to lead this team into sectionals with one loss right now. And that's, they have the Cuba brothers, I think. I'm assuming they're brothers.
There's one Cuba, I think, right? Isn't it Washburns are brothers?
Yeah, the Washburns are, I think there's only one.
Owen Cuba, and maybe I'm wrong. But you see the same names in the box score. A lot of double-digit scorers in addition to Washburn.
Yeah, there's only one Cuba.
It's the same thing in South Seneca. You got the Halsey, Amazano. There's 3 or 4 kids that are always up there. So, yeah, good point. Just a sophomore. Honeoye basketball is on the rise, the Bulldogs. So, anyways, thanks a lot for joining us. We will return next Monday. There's a full week of games this week. And Paul, where are you going to be this week again?
Yeah, so for sure tomorrow, Geneva Lions, and then Friday we'll have a game. We have like 3 of them right now that we have to figure out and choose which way to go. We haven't done a girls game yet, so I'm kind of partial to get to one of those girls games, admittedly. So, Gananda at Lions, Newark at Waterloo. Probably come down to one of those 2.
Newark Waterloo might be the one, man.
Yeah,
that should be a good one.
Yeah.
So anyways, enjoy. Hope you get out to see some games in person. If not, check out Finger Lakes 1 Tuesday night. 7 o'clock, 7:30, 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, Geneva at Lions. Probably our game of the week this week. And live on FingerLakes1.com. So, again, thanks for being with us on the Upstate Hoops podcast. Connect with us, social media, Facebook, X, TikTok. Subscribe to us on YouTube, and our audio-only podcast is available most everywhere you can enjoy your audio content. You can find our show, live stream games, and local news, weather, and sports 24/7 at FingerLakes1.com. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week on Monday afternoon. Until then, have a great week.